There are days when the body is sitting in the living room, but the soul seems to be gazing out the window at a place that doesn't exist. The sound of the city arrives like a distant echo. The voices around dissolve into the air, as if they were only memories of conversations that never happened. The eyes blink, but not to see, to try to come back. She, the soul, watches, motionless, as if floating a step behind herself. The fingers touch the arm of the chair, but the touch feels like it belongs to someone else. The heart beats, but the sound comes from a distant room, muffled, almost impossible to hear. In that moment, the world loses its weight. The air feels thinner, as if there were less gravity in the space around. Light comes in through the window, but it doesn't warm, it only outlines silhouettes in motion. It's a sensation that can't be explained to someone who's never felt it, like trying to describe wind to someone who's never felt cold. It's not sadness. It's not distraction. It's the strange certainty that you are here and somewhere else at the same time. Maybe it's the way the shadows move across the walls. Maybe it's an ancient whisper coming from somewhere between sleep and waking, calling a name you no longer remember. Or maybe it's simply the first sign that the soul has already begun to drift away. And what if this drifting isn't an accident? What if it's a silent reminder, almost invisible, that you were never completely bound to flesh? The world around keeps turning, but something inside knows. There are two worlds coexisting. One that everyone can see, and another so close you could almost touch it, but only if the soul decides to cross. The call doesn't come with words. It comes with absences, the taste of food fading away, the name of someone vanishing from memory for a few seconds, the sensation of walking without feeling your feet touch the ground. And then, in the most unlikely instant, the body breathes, but the soul seems to hold its breath. Because maybe this isn't just another ordinary day. Maybe it's the moment you begin to realize you've never been entirely in the place where you think you are. There is something few ever see, and even fewer truly feel. A connection so subtle it cannot be severed by the touch of a blade, nor undone in the silence of death. A thread of light, invisible to ordinary eyes, yet vibrating like a distant song in the space between worlds. The ancients called it the silver cord. Not made of metal, but of essence. Not cold like steel, but pulsing like a living river. It stretches from a hidden point within the body to realms where time does not count the hours. When the soul moves, this cord stretches as if breathing along with it. Sometimes it hums, emitting a sound only the most awakened heart can hear. Other times, it stays still, as if watching, patient, the distance that is slowly growing. It does not only appear during sleep. There are moments in the day, while you're walking down the street, or listening to a song you can't explain why it touches you so deeply, when this thread seems to be pulled far away. And in that pull, something inside you hesitates, as if you were about to fall, yet the body doesn't move. It is this thread that keeps your consciousness from becoming completely lost when the soul crosses the body's threshold. Without it, there would be no return. Without it, there would be no bridge. But it also keeps secrets. For each time it stretches, it lets small sparks slip through, memories of other places, echoes of voices you've never met in this life, fragments of colors that don't belong to this world. They are traces of where the soul has been, and perhaps where it still belongs. And some say that when the silver cord vibrates differently, it's a sign that the body and soul are no longer moving in the same rhythm. It's like a song where the singer and the melody have fallen out of sync, until, for some reason, one of them decides to stop singing. When this thread stretches to its limit, you feel it. Not in the muscles, not on the skin, but in a place that has no name. It is a sudden absence, a brief dizziness, a chill out of nowhere, even on a warm day. And in those seconds, the world seems to freeze, as if something were about to happen, as if the next step would be crossing an invisible portal. What would you do if you realized you were just one breath away from leaving your body? Would you ignore it, or follow the thread to discover what lies on the other side? Some signs don't arrive with written warnings. They appear as small anomalies in daily life, discreet, almost imperceptible, until they start to repeat. Suddenly, the ground feels farther away. The body walks, but it feels as if you're floating a few centimeters above it. The weight of your hands doesn't match what you see, as if bones and muscles were only replicas of something more real that exists somewhere else. There are lapses, small absences, moments when you look at an object, a face, a street, and take a few seconds to recognize what's in front of you. Not because you forgot, but because for an instant your soul was observing another landscape. The sudden chill is another sign, not the one caused by wind, but the one born within, as if the heart had been plunged into icy water. It comes and goes quickly, yet leaves an echo, a strange feeling that the body has been crossed by something invisible. And then there's that lack of hunger, not just for food, but for everything that keeps routine alive. Food loses its taste, conversations lose their meaning, time loses its urgency. It's as if the soul, in drifting away, takes with it the appetite for earthly life. On certain days, the body reacts as if it were just a temporary container. Slower movements, shallow breathing, long stares that drift into nothing. You catch yourself looking at your own hands as if they were borrowed pieces, trying to remember how to use them. And then comes the most subtle symptom of all, the feeling of being a spectator in your own life. Sitting at a table with other people, hearing laughter, words, stories, but feeling like you're simply watching a movie, as if there were a thin barrier between you and the scene, a film of glass that keeps you from truly touching the world. Many ignore these signs, blaming them on fatigue, stress, or lack of sleep. But what if they're reminders? Silent messages that your soul is already exploring territories the body can't reach? Because deep down, every symptom is a form of language. And when the soul begins to drift away, the body whispers in ways that only those willing to listen can understand. The curious thing is that these symptoms rarely come alone. They cluster together, form patterns, tell stories. And when you start piecing them together, you realize the narrative isn't about illness, but about transition. What would come after noticing all these signs? Perhaps the realization that even time might begin to change. There are days when the clock seems to conspire against logic. The hand moves forward, and yet nothing changes. Or the whole world rushes ahead of you, while you drag yourself through a minute that feels endless. When the soul begins to drift from the body, time stops obeying common rules. It's as if it moves to its own rhythm, and the body is trapped in another, slower or faster. That difference creates subtle cracks in perception. Have you ever felt like you spent hours staring at the ceiling, only to check the clock and see that only a few minutes had passed? Or the opposite, a short conversation that felt like it lasted half a day? That's the echo of misalignment, the silent symptom that not all parts of you are in the same place. Visually, it's like living inside a surrealist painting. Clocks melting at the edges of memory. Shadows stretched too far for the hour. Lights changing color without you noticing when it began. In those moments, the world seems to hesitate. The people around you speak and move, but the sound of their words arrives late, as if traveling down a long, distant hallway. Footsteps don't match the beating of your heart. Your breathing doesn't follow the rhythm of the environment. This lack of sync is more than a strange sensation. It's a call. A reminder that physical time is only a layer. When the soul steps away, it moves into other territories where time is not a line, but an ocean. And when it returns, it brings splashes from those invisible tides, disrupting the inner clock. Some feel this misalignment as a warning, a discomfort. Others experience it as freedom, as if they had briefly escaped the prison of hours. But either way, this is the moment when the soul whispers, "You do not belong to this rhythm alone." And what if the time we know is only an agreement between body and soul? And if, in breaking that agreement, you begin to remember who you are beyond flesh? Because once you feel time dissolve, it never carries the same weight again. There are moments when the soul drifts away and feels no urgency to come back. It's not escape. It's not abandonment. It's self-preservation. It watches the body from a distance like someone looking at a house after a fire, still standing but marked and scarred. And sometimes, what it sees inside is too much to bear. Unresolved traumas. Words that wounded and kept echoing. Days repeated without purpose, as if they were copies of themselves. The soul, sensitive like water reflecting the sky, chooses to retreat, floating beyond the reach of physical and emotional pain. In this state, life goes on. The body wakes, gets dressed, speaks, fulfills obligations. But everything is done on autopilot, as if the light inside had gone out, leaving only a mechanical reflection. There's no sparkle in the eyes. No appetite for new stories. What once sparked laughter now barely stirs a sigh. And strangely, there's a certain relief in it. Far from the body, the soul breathes easier. It doesn't feel the weight of emotional gravity. It can float in regions untouched by wounds. But that distance has a cost. The body, without the soul's full presence, begins to feel an emptiness heavier than any sadness. A fatigue that no amount of sleep can heal. A lack of energy that no food can replenish. It's as if the temple were open, but the altar were empty. Some spend years in this state, half present, half absent. They grow so used to the numbness that they forget there's another way to live. The danger is that the longer the soul stays away, the more fragile the bridge to bring it back becomes. And there are places, in the space between worlds, so silent and welcoming that it may not want to return. But what if I told you that even without wanting to, the soul can be called back? That there are triggers, subtle portals, that draw it the way light draws a lost traveler in the dark? Not every portal looks like a golden arch or a glowing rift in the air. Some disguise themselves in details so simple, you pass through them without realizing it. There are songs that, when played, don't just awaken memories, they shift the soul's vibration. Melodies that echo frequencies from other places, opening invisible passages. Suddenly, you're no longer here. You're in a field you've never seen in this life, feeling a wind that doesn't exist on your street, hearing the distant sound of voices that speak no known language. Certain scents do this too. The fragrance of a flower you've never seen, yet it stirs tears as if you'd lost something deeply beloved. The smell of rain on asphalt that, for some reason, transports you to a rooftop that no longer exists, or perhaps never did. And there are places in the world that act like keys. Paths in forests, ancient bridges, abandoned houses. Crossing them, you feel the air change, heavier or lighter. Colors seem more saturated or paler. The silence takes on a sound of its own. These portals aren't only in physical space. They exist in emotional space as well. A moment of extreme pain, an instant of joy so profound it breaks the barrier between worlds. The heart expands and, without meaning to, you step into a territory where the body cannot follow. In those moments, the silver cord vibrates. The soul slips away. And before you realize it, you're somewhere else. Perhaps watching your own body from the outside, perhaps wandering through dimensions where time does not count. The risk? Some of these portals don't lead where you think, and not all of them guarantee a way back. The most subtle of them is the one that opens in the middle of routine without any extraordinary event. A simple blink held a little too long, a daydream lasting just a few seconds. And when you return, you realize that, without moving at all, you'd been gone. But if there are passages that carry you far away, there are also signs that something still tethers you here. And perhaps the most notable of them is the weight that begins to pull the soul back. When the soul drifts away, the body becomes a strange territory. It's like wearing clothes far too heavy, made for someone larger or smaller than you. Every movement seems to demand a disproportionate effort. The weight isn't only physical. It's a fatigue that settles into the bones, a numbness that spreads across the skin. The eyelids grow heavier, as if carrying memories that don't belong to this life. At the same time, the soul, out there, experiences the opposite. Lightness. Like smoke dissolving into the wind. Like sunlight dancing on the surface of water, free to move as it pleases. This difference creates a contrast the body can feel, even if the mind doesn't understand. It's like existing in two states of matter at once, solid and vapor. Part of you dragging along the earth, and part of you floating in skies you've never known. For some, this sensation is suffocating. For others, addictive. Because when the soul tastes lightness, the body begins to feel like a prison. The physical senses, once rich, full of flavor, color, and texture, become dull filters compared to the intensity of what is experienced on the other side. But here's something few understand. This lightness does not mean the absence of responsibility. The soul, even outside the body, carries threads of energy tying it to what it left behind. It feels when the body feels. It knows when the body suffers. And sometimes, that connection is what calls it back. There is a critical moment when the soul must decide. Return to the familiar weight, or move toward an uncertain freedom. And when it remains absent for too long, a phenomenon begins to occur. The body, unaccustomed to its full presence, starts losing subtle parts of itself. The expression changes. The gaze loses focus. The voice sounds softer, more distant. It is at this point that signs of something even deeper begin to appear. The realization that outside the body, the soul can hear and see what the body cannot. When the soul drifts far enough, it begins to cross invisible boundaries. And in these crossings, sounds and images rise like gentle waves breaking on the shore of a sea that doesn't exist on any map. Sometimes it's only a murmur, a delicate, faceless voice that speaks strange syllables, languages you've never learned, yet somehow feel familiar. Other times, it's distant laughter carried by the wind, coming from a place that doesn't belong to time. The vision changes as well. Colors deepen, as if each shade carried a hidden meaning. The green of a leaf isn't just green, it's a song. The golden hue of light isn't just warmth, it's memory. And there are presences, not always visible, but perceptible like the weight of a gaze on the back of your neck. Beings that don't come too close, yet remain at the edge of your awareness, watching. not with hostility, but with an ancient curiosity, as if they've been waiting for you for a very long time. At certain moments, the borders between worlds grow so thin that past and future overlap. You feel as though you've already lived that instant, the famous déjà vu, but now it carries the certainty that it's not just an impression. Perhaps it's the memory of an old life, or the glimpse of something that hasn't happened yet. Some describe hearing music without instruments, only pure frequencies vibrating in the center of the chest. Others feel textures in the air, as if the atmosphere itself were made of silk threads or golden dust dancing around them. All of this mingles with the feeling of not wanting to return, because when the soul tastes this expansion, the physical world feels far too narrow. But inevitably, a moment arrives when something begins to call. A gentle impulse, almost imperceptible, coming from both inside and outside at the same time. A call that reminds you, the body is still waiting for you, and this call cannot be ignored forever. There always comes a moment when the thread connecting the soul to the body begins to pull it back. Not violently, but with an unshakable firmness, like the sea drawing back the wave that tried to go too far. Sometimes, this call comes in the form of a physical need. The body hungers for air. The muscles send signals of exhaustion. The heart races as if to remind the soul there is still blood to pump, warmth to keep, life to live. Other times, the return is stirred by something profoundly human. The touch of a hand, the sound of a familiar laugh, the gaze of someone who, even without understanding, senses that you are far away and wants you back. There are also the invisible calls, the silent force of a mission you have yet to fulfill, the vow made before birth, the one the soul carries even when the body forgets. A commitment to something or someone still awaiting your part in the story. The return, however, is not instant. The soul approaches in layers, like someone passing through veils of varying thickness. First, it begins to feel the weight of the body again. Then, the density of air in the lungs. Finally, the sound of its own heartbeat, like a drum reclaiming its territory. Some resist. Others surrender to the return as one would to shelter in a storm. But in the end, all realize there is a reason to come back. The body is more than a vessel. It is the altar where the soul transforms existence into experience. And when soul and body meet again, there is a moment of integration so deep, it feels as if the very borders of the self have been redrawn. But this integration is fragile and must be cared for, because the true miracle is not in leaving, it is in staying. There is a rare, almost sacred moment when soul and body align once more. The air flows in, and both breathe together. There is no distance, no absence, no cord stretched to their limit. The feeling is of a perfect fit, as if every cell had rediscovered its original spark. In that moment, the world feels neither too heavy nor too light. It is the exact balance, matter supporting spirit, and spirit illuminating matter. The body ceases to be a prison, becoming a living temple. The soul, in turn, is no longer a restless visitor. It is the guardian that dwells within the altar it helped to create. Breathing takes on a different quality. It is not just oxygen filling the lungs. It is light, it is presence, it is consciousness occupying every corner of the self. The eyes see with greater clarity, not because physical sight has improved, but because spiritual perception pours over every shape, every color, every shadow. Touch changes as well. Holding a cup of coffee, feeling the wind on your face, touching the skin of someone you love, Everything becomes fuller, more real, more alive. It's as if the world suddenly began pulsing in the same rhythm as your heartbeat. In this state, distractions lose their power. External voices, pressures, and noise can no longer so easily pull the soul away from itself. You begin to recognize the value of remaining whole, here and now. This doesn't mean the soul will never drift again. It is a traveler by nature, an explorer of dimensions. But you learn to call it back more quickly, more gently, more consciously. And then, you understand what may be the greatest secret of all. You are not only the body, nor only the soul. You are the bridge between worlds. Each beat of your heart is an echo that resonates in two places at once, on the ground you walk and in the infinite that calls you. True freedom is not in escaping the body, nor in imprisoning the soul. It is in honoring the silent pact you made before you were born, to fully inhabit this temple while it lasts, and to let the light you carry touch everything that lives around you. And when that pact is remembered, body and soul breathe as one, and the entire universe seems to breathe with you.